As an aspiring business leader, your time is at a premium. But don't let that stop you advancing your career. With only 2 days attendance required each month, the new Modular Executive MBA from UCD Smurfit School is the flexible choice for those with busy professional and personal schedules. Unlock your leadership potential with one of the world's leading business schools. It's your future on your terms. Learn more today at smurfitschool.ie. UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School. Developing impactful business leaders.
When heartburn and indigestion hit, take Gaviscon's Extra Dual Layer tablet. It works fast and it's longer lasting than antacids for up to 4 hours relief. Bat heartburn and indigestion away with Gaviscon Extra Chewable Tablet. Gaviscon Extra Chewable Tablets contain sodium alginate, sodium bicarbonate and calcium carbonate for heartburn and indigestion. Always read the label.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Minimal contact in stadiums shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Now, you're very welcome back to Off the Ball this Wednesday evening. Neil Treacy with you until 10 o'clock this evening. Latest scores in the Premier League, still 2-2 between Leeds United and Newcastle. 2 Irish goal scorers in that game for Newcastle, Jeff Hendrick and Kieran Clark. While elsewhere at the moment, it is still 1-1 between Arsenal and Southampton at the Emirates Stadium. Arsenal down to 10 men, though, after a red card for Gabriel. And then Everton 1-0 up against Leicester City at the moment, approaching the 70-minute mark in that game. 3 games kicking off at 8 o'clock. Fulham host Brighton, West Ham host Crystal Palace, and it is Liverpool against Spurs kicking off at 8 o'clock. And that is the game we are turning our attention to next, because it is the top 2 coming into the night. The champions hosting the club top of the table. Rob Daly is with me at the moment. He's commentating tonight for Tottenham Hotspur FC. Evening, Rob.
Evening, Neil.
How are you doing this evening?
Very good. Very good. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all. All set for a big one at Anfield, a place. I mean, Liverpool they've had a good recent record against Spurs, but looking back at the last 3 games at Anfield between those two sides, 2 of those were Liverpool wins, but you have to think Spurs actually played quite well in both of those, and for most parts, and 1 draw as well. Like, you look at the form straight away, and it's pointing in the direction of Liverpool, but Spurs have actually been okay against them over the last couple of years without getting the results.
They have. Yeah, I mean, they're now foreverly entwined by the fact they competed in the 2019 Champions League final. Liverpool, the victors in Madrid, of course, a year and a half ago now. But it is Liverpool have had the better of this fixture of late. I think for Spurs, it's 1 win in 15 Premier League meetings, and that was when they thrashed Liverpool 4-1 at Wembley back in October 2017. But Mourinho, you know, when this kind of thing was put to him, especially about Spurs' relatively poor record at Anfield, he was quite dismissive and said, we're just ignoring all that and getting on with the job. And given the improvement he's seen from his side this season against the top 6, I think there's good reason to believe that they could come away from Anfield with something tonight, given Liverpool's injuries as well, especially at centre-back.
Yeah, and you know Jose is feeling pretty good based on what kind of a press conference he gives out. Yesterday was really like one of the Jose of old ones, where he had the reporters eating out of the palm of his hand. That charisma was there. And that line everyone's been quoting, Liverpool is the result of, if I'm not wrong, 1,894 days of work with Jurgen Klopp, and we are the work of 390 days. I just love the, if I'm not wrong, 1,894 days, as if he hadn't calculated that down to probably hours, minutes and seconds as well, if needed to quote it.
I would love to know who his stats guy is, because you know I have to do all my prep myself. But I imagine he didn't count up those days himself. You know, he obviously making the broad point that Klopp's been given the scope and the time to build something truly special for Liverpool. And you know, if you even look at the squad tonight, the number of injuries they've got: no Jota, Van Dijk, Gomez, Thiago, Milner, Shaqiri, Matip not past fit to play due to the back spasms he was suffering against Fulham. Keita fit enough for the bench along with Oxlade-Chamberlain. He has built a phenomenal squad, because it's still a very strong team that Liverpool put out tonight. You know, Mourinho was in great form the other day when it was put to him about rotating Harry Kane in and out of the team given the busy schedule. He said, yeah, I'm going to rest him against Liverpool, and then I'm going to rest him at the weekend against Leicester, and then was quick to say, look, I need my best players for the biggest game. He's had some rest in the Europa League nights, and that's true. He hasn't really played much in the Europa League this season in the group stage. So, you know, Mourinho comes into his own in those presses on the biggest of occasions, and look, going into tonight, these were the top 2 teams in the Premier League.
he does definitely seem to have his swagger back, and there is a kind of a steeliness about Spurs this season that we hadn't had there. Like during the news round, we were playing a clip from Gary Breen, who was on OTB AM this morning, and he was speaking about just how different the Spurs defence is, particularly compared to last season.
Yeah, there were games when Spurs did look very fragile, and actually going into lockdown, they had kept something like 2 or 3 clean sheets all season in the Premier League, which is obviously very un-Mourinho as well. They kept as many clean sheets as they did in that whole first period as they did in lockdown. In Project Restart, once the season got back underway. They do have the best defence in the Premier League right now. They've only conceded 10 times. Lloris has only conceded 1 in his last 5 games, and that was a goal that he spilt effectively into the path of Jeffrey Schlupp at the weekend in that draw with Palace. There is a steeliness to it, and I'd point to Pierre-Emile Højbjerg as well as one of the signings of the summer. Anyone who saw Spurs last season knew that not only Spurs needed a defensive midfield player, they knew you'd know that Mourinho would want one. Mourinho's had some of the iconic defensive midfielders of the 21st century in his team. Not to say that Højbjerg will definitely be up there with Makelele and Cambiasso and the like, but he has been sensational. And if he continues playing the way he's playing, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and he doesn't really get injured, his record at Southampton showed that, I think he'd be in the running for team of the season if he keeps up this kind of form. He has been a game changer for Spurs, and not only is it the settled pairing of Alderweireld and Dier at centre back, that is what Mourinho's going for now in the Premier League. It's having Højbjerg and that little triangle in front of Lloris that has helped keep out big teams like Chelsea, Manchester City, and Arsenal of late in the Premier League.
Yeah, on Dier as well. Like, was there always a feeling that someday Eric Dier would just naturally drift back to playing centre back more regularly?
For Eric Dier in subsequent interviews, he said yes. He said he always saw himself as a centre-back. And if we think back to when Spurs under Pochettino were at their best free-flowing football, it was when they played with a back three and Walker and Rose were wreaking havoc down the wing like Robertson and Alexander-Arnold are now. And Dier was in a back three back then. Now, obviously, it's a back four. Dier's one of 2 central defenders. Dier said to Pochettino for a long time, I want to play centre-back, I want to play centre-back. Pochettino wouldn't play him there. It was very rare that Pochettino did use Dier in his last 2 or 3 years in charge at centre-back. Mourinho tried Dier in defensive midfield. He's a big fan of Dier. We saw in the documentary, for anyone who saw it, that he told Dier, I tried to sign you, the subtext being at Manchester United. But I think they've come to an arrangement whereby Dier's future is at centre-back. And I think the decision has been vindicated by the fact that he is England's centre-back now. He's one of England's central defenders, first-choice centre-back. So he has been playing very well. And I'd also point to a game he missed, Neil, where he came back from England duty with a hamstring injury for the 3-3 draw with West Ham. He missed that game. He came back in, and they've barely conceded since. So there's an all-round triumph there for Alderweireld, who looked a bit out of the picture, Dier, who we didn't know was a centre-back, and Højbjerg, who was probably an underestimated signing in the summer.
Mm-hmm. Last time you were on with us a few weeks back, Rob, you spoke about how Spurs were really kind of easing Gareth Bale back into things at the club. He hasn't played a league game since the 8th of November. Are we getting to a point now where they actually do need to start seeing a little bit more of him?
I think they always were relatively accepting that it would take a couple of months to get Bale up to speed. He arrived injured, so the first month or so, Gareth Bale didn't feature at all. The setback tonight, the reason he's not involved in the 18-man squad is illness. It isn't coronavirus. Mourinho confirmed that before the Palace game of the weekend. He said, that's why he's not available. They tried to get him sharp enough for this game. They couldn't do so. I think they're willing to be patient on him, to be frank. I mean, you'd love to be in a position whereby you're now saying the front three is Bale, Kane and Son. But they don't actually need Bale at the moment. I think it'll get to January, February time where they assess, right, are we seeing anything close to Bale of old? Are we seeing a player who's really going to help us push on to the level, and if next level? And if so, we look at what we're going to do in the summer with the fact his loan from Real Madrid does technically come to an end at the end of this season. But there's no panic from Spurs in that regard from what I can tell in terms of whether Gareth Bale's getting up to speed or not. From what Mourinho said recently as well, he was probed about it. He said, we need Gareth to believe as well that he can play a game and a half a week or something to that effect. So A setback tonight that he's not involved, but Steven Bergwijn's been doing a very good job on the right wing, not only in an attacking sense, but more so in a defensive sense.
Dele Alli on the bench tonight as well. What way are things starting to look with him now? All the talk for a while now has been a possible PSG loan in January. What's the feeling been like around him?
Well, for Dele, he came on at the weekend. It was actually a surprise to see him involved in a Premier League squad, to be frank. It was probably partly down to the fact that Bale was unavailable against Crystal Palace. Dele came on. It was his first Premier League appearance since a sub-appearance against Manchester United in the 6-1 win. Going into the weekend, he'd only played 66 minutes of Premier League football. I don't think Spurs are in a position whereby they'd be that keen to let Dele go, be it out on loan or on a permanent deal. We've got, in the Premier League, the Christmas fixtures coming up. Who knows who's going to get injured over that mad period where you're playing every 2 or 3 days. But for Dele right now, he's not in the team, and he hasn't really been playing in the Europa League either. He started the home game against Ludogorets, played pretty well, set up a goal, but they didn't start the next two. He's got a lot of work to do. And the issue for Dele as well is Tanguy Ndombele and Giovanni Lo Celso are looking like two of Spurs' most creative players at the moment. And they sort of take up the spot Dele would on the pitch. So tonight it's Lo Celso getting the nod ahead of Ndombele. They're basically rotating in and out at the moment. And I think that's why the pathway for Dele Alli to get back in the team right now is very difficult.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, like, you've been involved for a while there. What's the feeling around the club? Top of the table coming into today. Does it feel like they're kind of right in a title chase, or is there a feeling that top four seems the more realistic goal towards the end of the season? Because granted, we're in the middle of December, but we are only a third of the way through the season.
Yeah, I was actually looking at it and sort of getting pumped for the game tonight, as you do. And I was thinking, it's only the 13th game of the season. After this one, there's 25 more matches and 75 points to play for. But it does feel like, a big game. It feels like, as much as Mourinho said, there's no such thing as a statement performance tonight, we just go into this to try and win. It would be a good indicator as to where they are. And while I would have just said, Champions League qualification is the pure objective for Spurs this season, that's it. Given City faltering, given the unusual concertinaing of the season, given that the teams in the Champions League will have tougher fixtures come February, March time than Spurs, who've been drawn with Wolfsburg out of Austria in the Europa League. It's not impossible to make a push. If you said to Mourinho now, you're not in the title race, but we guarantee you top four, I'm not sure he'd take it. I think he might be looking at this, particularly with the injuries to Gomez and Van Dijk, and thinking there might be a chance to win the league. And I point to the fact that Liverpool have dropped points in 5 games this season. They only dropped points in 6 last season. It's a weird campaign. It might be there for someone to surprisingly nick, and it would be one of Mourinho's great achievements, and most surprising if he were to win the Premier League with Spurs. But I'd still have Liverpool as favourites to win their 20th title. All
right, Rob. Well, it's been great speaking to you, and I'm sure we'll hear more from you throughout the season as well. Enjoy the game tonight.
Cheers, Neil. You too.
That's Rob Daly from Tottenham Hotspur TV, who'll be commentating on that game tonight. Just latest scores before we take an ad break. Everton now 2-0 up on Leicester City. Mason Holgate doubling the scores for them. 10 minutes left in that game. And Leeds 3-2 up on Newcastle. Stuart Dallas with a goal on 77 minutes. Arsenal Southampton still 1-1. We'll be back after the break.
Football